additional permission to do the payment in bank installments. Okay, okay, I will continue by explaining the difference between IMFZ, Ijaro, and Istisna. Okay, first, is it my voice clear?
Yes, it's clear.
Ijaro mau suka feel Zima contract cannot be revoked if the source of benefit is damaged. The lessor is mandated to provide an alternative to the damaged source of benefit, even if it occurs at the start of the contract. This is the difference from a special ijaro, where the contract will be cancelled whether the asset is damaged before or after the lessee takes ownership. The second difference, if the desired service is damaged along the way, the tenant has the right to be replaced. This feature gives financial institutions or bank, when financing service, the prerogative to change the recipient who has been named in his agreement with the actual service provider if the customer decides to renew or cancel the service. Then there is a third difference. There is no possibility of an option to cancel due to the defective objects in Al-Ijar Al-Mausufa fi Zima contract. The person who rents out is required to replace the damaged asset. This is in contract to special Ijaro, where the lessee has the right to cancel the contract if his assets are damaged. In fact, it is not permissible for the lessor to deny responsibility for defect in an Ijaro contract. Then there's a in the IMFZ contract is the transportation of an object. The cost of the packing goods must be borne by the tenant.
Now we're losing your voice, Sabrina.
Hello,
Yes, it's back. It's now back.
Okay. I'll continue the presentation by explaining the difference between IMFZ and Istishna. First, in the contract, Ijara and Istishna are allowed to pay worker in specific installments, but that is not allowed for IMFZ. This is in the most correct opinion due to the ratings of the result. And the second is Istishna is actually the sale of a commodity which can be consumed or not consumed, and that is the subject of the contract. Meanwhile, IMFZ is actually a form of a rent, and the subject of the contract is benefit of a commodity that must not be consumed. The commodities produced in an Istisna contract belong to the job orderer, and this will be the last difference. And while in the custody of the manufacturer, they are responsible for the damage. In the ownership of IMFZ, the commodities are not transferred to the tenants, but only the benefit. Okay, next presentation will be explained by my friend.
Hello, thank you Tiara. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So let's continue to the next presentation, and I'm going to tell about the pillars, principle, and also the fatwa MUI of Ijaro Mafsuwa fi Zimah. So in the next slide, we're going to talk about the pillars of Ijaro Mufsufah fi Zimah. First is there is a renter and also rent or lessor. So we can call it mustajir and muajir. So without these two subjects, the contract cannot be carried out. And the second is shigot. Just like any other contract, they have to uh, do the ijab and kabul. And the last of the pillars is ijarah object. So something that become object in the contract, or we can call it ma'jur. So next, in the next slide. So here is the all principle of all ijarah al musufah fi azimah. First is the object that are valuable and can be used because the object of the ijarah is the benefit of the goods. So actually, because the value of the good and not only because what the good is. And the second is renter and lessors have to know the detail of the goods, clearly know about the good specifications. And then also this akad can be hand over, the object can be hand over. As object, the goods also have to be easily hand over by renter and lessor. The last is used for purpose that are permitted by Sharia. So last but not least, transaction and the goods have to suitable of the Sharia perspective and also the Sharia goals. Next to the next month. Okay, so here is the ijarah mausufah fi al-zimah in Al-Quran and also in Hadith. First is Al-Baqarah 28 and also the Al-Qasas, and the hadith is from Abu Sa'id Al-Khudri that Rasulullah said that in fact buying and selling is only legal if it is done and a consensual basis from both of subject. So this hadith and ayat of Quran can constantly tell also about the pillars and also the principle. So next of the about the fatwa DSN in the next slide. Sorry, mungkin before slide before, yes. So fatwa DSN. So there's 3 point important from this fatwa about ijarah mafsufah fi zimah. First is provision regarding the benefit of the goods, or we can call and benefit, and the employment or charity. First is clear and measurable specification, malum mundabith, in order to avoid disputes or al-niza. Can be hand over either essentially or legally, and an agreed time for summation and the period of ijarah, and its accordance with a Sharia principle, like I said before in the before slide and the last slide. Sorry. So the second is provision related to rental goods. So it describes the criteria for rental goods must be clear and the specifications are measurable. Second is rental goods described may not belong to the lessors at the time the contract is executed. The lessor must have sufficient capacity to materialize and deliver the rental goods, and it is strongly suspected that rental goods can be materialized and delivered at the agreed time. So the third one is provisions regarding advance and guarantee. First, in ijarah fi al-zimah contract, it have to cash advance is permitted and fidya submitted by the lessor to the party who rents out. So advance can be used as compensation, or we can call it al-ta'widh, by the lessor for costs or losses arising from the process of realizing rental goods if the tenant cancel the lease and become a rental payment or ujrah. If the all ijarah al-musafah fi al-zimah contract is carried out according to the agreement. So next to the next slide. So the next presentation is carried out by my friend. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to explain the application model of Al-Ijara Al-Mausufa fi Al-Zima Akad in Sharia Financial Institution. Next, there are three applications model that I will describe. First, IMFZ Agreement for Home Ownership Financing Products, or PPR in that. There are at least two financial institutions that currently offer Al-Ijara Al-Mausufafi Al-Zima agreement, either as a standalone product or in combination with other products or hybrid contract. These products are offered for home financing purposes where the property being financed has not been completed or is under construction. Due to the fact that the customers have not been able to enjoy the benefits during the construction process, the bank used the concept of al-ijara al-mausufa fi al-zimah contract to allow the payment of installment made while waiting for the completion of the property development. Next, and this is scheme of home financing with the al-ijara al-mausufa fi al-zimah agreement. First, the customers enters into a lease agreement with the bank or agreement leasing to rent out a house. Second, there will be a lease agreement between the customer and the bank for the lease agreed with transfer of assets to the customer at the end financing. Third, the developer enters into a parallel istisna agreement with the bank for building and handing over the house under consideration for istisna purchase price. And last one is the customer should approach the developer to inspect the assets. And the second model is Al-Ijara Al-Mausafafi Al-Zima Agreement for Education Financing Products. These service providers are required to allow students' clients to use the benefits mentioned above. But actually, this type of ijara has been applied in previous decades, as quoted by Al-Minhaj in Jawahir al-Uqud in teaching the Holy Quran and calligraphy. However, due to the complexities of life today, the way of passing on ijara in its today is different from the way it was applied in the past. The European Fatwa and Research Council has mentioned several general rules regarding the application of Al-Ijara al-Mausafafi al-Zima agreement financing for educational services. Financial institutions and educational institutions, such as universities, institutes, and other schools, enter into a financing service agreement based on the Al-Ijara al-Mausafafi al-Zima contract. In this agreement, both parties are required to determine education service through an accurate description for the service, namely the price and tenure of the education service. Next week. And there are several important things that need to be considered in providing financing for education, such as first, financial institutions and educational institutions agree to use the IMFZ agreement. Second one, the bank submits an agreement to the educational institutions with the applicant or student itself and sells educational service based on the sale of murabahat student. And the third, the bank is obliged to pay the rental fee directly when students start receiving educational service from educational institution. If the bank delays, the educational institution has the right to ask the bank to complete the payment on time. If the bank refuses to pay the rental payments as agreed in the agreement, the educational institutions has the right to claim compensation. Next, the bank has the right to use the subject matter in any way they want, namely by selling it to another party. However, banks are not allowed to make any change to the subject matter without permission for the educational institution. If it has been offered to another party in the event of termination of use, the educational institution may stop providing service to students, and the student has the right to ask the bank to find another university that can offer the same service to students. And lastly, the educational institution has the right to terminate the contract if the bank does one of the following. such as the bank does not pay lease payments that are due or the bank used the wrong document to conclude contract.
Okay, next, my name is Amira, and I will continue the presentation regarding another application model of IMFZ in contract in Sharia financial institution. So the next model is the IMFZ contract or agreement for sukuk. This model is applied, for example, for a real estate developer plans to build described housing unit with detailed specifications. There are several specifications in this model. The first one is in this model, the sukuk issuer is the lease, or in other words, the company that the issues the sukuk in these cases is called the lessor. And the second one, the sukuk customer will become the leases of the benefit of the items determined by the lessor who has undertaken the responsibility to provide. And then after that, the result of the subscription will produce ujroh, or we can call it the compensation of the lease. And the last one, the sukuk holder will share the benefit of the goods determined by the lessor who has undertaken the responsibility to provide. And then they will benefit and share responsibility for them. Okay, next. So in fact, the sukuk model with the IMFZ agreement is an innovative structure in the Islamic capital market. It is because based on this model is based on ijarah, which is considered one of the strongest Syariah contract, which accommodate flexibility and innovation according to the needs of the issuer and investor, and meets the Syariah requirement in terms of compliance. So for this reason, this feature make the scope of the forward ijarah issuance much broader. So next. So as we can see in the graph, the development of sukuk in Indonesia has increased in the past few years. So that by enabling the IMFZ contract to be used as a contract that cover the sukuk, of course, in the future it can be developed much better in development of sukuk. Okay, next. So next, I will enter the discussion regarding how the implementation of this contract in Indonesia today. So next. So this is data of financing portfolio in Indonesia. So the data show that from the total asset owned by the Islamic banking today, we can see that the financing portfolio based on the current contract is still dominated by the dominance of the murabaha contract. So like as we can see in the following graph, where the yellow graph is show the murabaha financing, while the green is show the ijarah contract. So this graph actually show us that there is very large gap between murabaha and ijarah financing. This gap is because Islamic bank is prepared to choose financing using murabaha and musyarakah, which has a fixed return than ijarah. Next. So for that reason, it can be concluded that the implementation of the IMFZ agreement in financing in a large project, it has never happened in Indonesia. Even if it has not financed in a not large project. Meanwhile, in several other countries like Malaysia, Arab, Dubai, this contract has been implemented in the financing of projects that require large fund. For example, there are construction of the Doraleh container port in Djibouti in Africa. Next. Okay. So the implemented of IMFZ Indonesia still lacking. It's because there are several reasons or several obstacles. Here are some barriers to the implementation of IMFZ. The first one is the result of the research stated that there are still many practitioners in Islamic financial institution who don't understand the IMFZ contract. Even the existence of the fatwa concerning the IMFZ is still unknown. And the second one is there is no regulation that is in order to carry out financing with the IMFZ contract. For example, for standard operating procedure relating this financing model. And then the last one, there are no regulation from the Financial Service Authority or OJK, which regulates the detail of this contract, is also not yet available. So next. I think that all for us. Thank you for your attention. Is there's any question? Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. It's very interesting. It's well carried out. I would like to make a few comments. However, it's almost 9 o'clock. Yeah, it's 15 to 9. So I suggest that we move on to the next group. We still have 2 more groups to go to present. So thank you, Nabila, Febrina, Nadila, and one more. Mana tadi? Amirah, yeah. Okay, okay. All right. Thank you very much for your presentation. It was enlightening, yeah, and insightful. So thank you. Now I would like to call on the third group.
Ma'am, I will stop share screen ya, ma'am. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much. You too. You're welcome. Kelompoknya Iqbal.
Okay, ma'am. I will share screen, ma'am.
Yeah, okay. Ada Iqbal, Asri, who else? Iqbal, Asri. Who
Demi,
else?
Erlangga, and Rizky, ma'am.
Okay. Demi, Erlangga, Rizky. Okay. Iqbal, Asri, Demi, Erlangga, Rizky. All right. Okay. You may start the presentation.
Okay, good morning, ma'am, and thanks also. Today we're going to present about the second questions that discuss the topic about the equity-based financing, also debt-based financing. Here is our group member. Consists of me, Asri, Deni, Erlangga, Iqbal, and also Rizky.
First one, I'm gonna talk about Indonesia's preference on debt financing. Next. I'm gonna talk about debt and equity financing first. So debt financing means you're borrowing money from an outside source and promising to pay it back with interest by a set date in the future. And equity financing means someone is putting money or assets into the business in exchange for some percentage of ownership. Next. And as we can see here, the debt financing consists of murabahah, istisna, and salam. And in equity financings, we have mudharabah and musyarakah. And if we look into the statistical data of Islamic banking by Otoritas Jasa Keuangan, murabahah, which is a debt financing, as it has been said before, it has the biggest number. And as per June 2019, 154 trillion rupiah is murabahah financing. From the total financing of 320 trillion, and by the end of and that's almost 50%. And by the end of 2019, it was at 160 trillion from the total debt financing equity of 173 trillion. Next. And why is that the case? Banks do not dare to take too big a risk among all the contracts. It is true that the murabahah contract has the lowest level of risk. If an example of mudharabah financing is taken, the bank will hand over its capital to the customer, and if there is a loss that is not due to the customer's negligence, the bank will bear the risk. And then murabah contracts are also preferred by parties because of the certainty related to its installments and margins, where there will be no change in margins as long as as the customer does not experience problem financing it. And customers generally do not want to bother much when applying for financing. Customers prefer financing that tends to be simple, and murabaha is considered simple for the public to understand. The concept of agreement or contract of murabaha, as well as the margin calculation of it, is easy for customers to understand. And this also applies to why banks use murabaha because it is a relatively easier financing to manage. Uh, and also a poor understanding of financing contracts. And it must be admitted that a good understanding of the community is still lacking, and this causes other financings that has more complex terms or contracts and calculations are rarely, well, not lately, but in less demand. Next.
Okay, thank you, Erlangga, for the explanation. And before Erlangga has explained about the reason why debt financing is always higher than the equity financing, and now we will show you the graph of the finance between the best and the equity. So here is the best financing from 2 years, and 2010 to 2020. And as we can see here that murabaha is always has the highest number between court and istisna as the debt financing, and it's also dominating from the January to the December, and it can be concluded that murabaha is, maybe we can say, it's still the king for the debt financing. Next.
Okay, so we are looking at the data on equity-based financing consisting of mudarabah and musyarakah during 2020. We can see that in equity-based financing, Indonesian prefer musyarakah over mudarabah. However, this may not only be due to the people's preferences, but also the bank's decision to channel the funds. In musyarakah, the bank can be directly involved in the business activities carried out by the borrower, while mudarabah limits the involvement of banks only as a channel of funds. So the risk faced by the bank is greater in mudarabah contract. Actually, this is not something that has been proven scientifically, but only my analysis. So I'm so sorry if the reality is different from what I'm saying. Next slide, please.
So now we are looking on the data of sukuk outstanding in Indonesia. It is based on the nominals, the nominal value, and the number of sukuk outstanding. We can see the blue line is sukuk based on ijaroh, and the orange is mudoroba, and the gray one is wakalah. You can see that ijaroh also always higher than mudoroba. This means that mudoroba as equity-based financing doesn't come to top of mind when people want to issue a sukuk. And my assumption is because ijaroh sukuk is the concept is something like the conventional bonds that will give a fixed return and tends to more safe for the holder or the issuer. So so the conclusion from this data is the equity-based financing is also doesn't preferred by Indonesians on sukuk. Next.
All right. Next is the comparison between the debt financing and equity financing from 2017 to 2019, and then we also get the 2020 data. But for this, for the debt financing, we can see that over and over by the year is always higher than the amount of equity financing. And in 2017 we got 157, and from the equity financing is only 118, and also in the 2018 is 160, and for the equity is only 100.45, and also the 2019 the debt financing is higher than the equity financing, and it's the debt financing it's content from the murabaha, istisna, and salam, and from the equity financing it's from mudarabah and musyarakah. Next. Okay, this is the 2020 comparison, and still that debt-based financing is higher than the equity financing.
Okay, maybe I will give more explanation for the previous slide, please. Okay, so actually the comparison between debt financing and equity financing is 2020. Not really different from the number where the average is the same, around like 179 triliun, and the difference that appear are not that far away. Next slide, please. Yeah, but when we compare between mudarabah and murabaha, we find a very unequal comparison between these two convenience. This is an interesting where murabaha is much higher than mudarabah, which is our concern every day. If we want to view this from a Sharia point of view, it is clear that mudarabah is more accordance with Sharia compliance than murabaha. But unfortunately, people seem not aware of this. So the solution to this problem will be explained in the next slides. Next slide.
Okay, now I'm going to explain about the solution, how people actually can transfer from the debt-based financing to the equity-based financing. Initially, I wanted to say that easing the requirements or guarantees to get the equity-based financing was a solution, but I think in the end it wasn't, because for the banks, there will definitely a bigger risk when the terms and guarantees are lightened. I think in equity-based financing, the customer may be moral hazard, and the bank doesn't know when it happened. And when that happened, the bank doesn't have sufficient collateral. The impact is the cost of monitoring will be much greater for monitoring its customers, and the overall risk for the bank will also be greater. So here I come with another solutions. The first, maybe we can give solution through the education and also the reposition of the bank itself. I think education is needed when with an economic approach and also a religious approach, or an approach to the world and also the hereafter. I think the broader and more efficient socialization can be through the various media, online or offline, with the aim of providing value of this equity-based product. And we know that usually people who use mudharabah or musyarakah financing are people who really understand their knowledge and their understand about the religion. And I think with education, the public will be given awareness, given the knowledge that with equity-based financing, it is able to eliminate usury, is able to provide aspect of justice in transaction, in also ethic in investment, promote shared value, and also avoid speculation. In a worldly manner, we can say that financial system will be more stable, but this will mutually benefit customers and the bank in the affair of this world and also in hereafter. And the second is through the human resource. That the competent human resource are needed to communicate the product value clearly and encourage customers to switch to equity-based financing. So here the human resource who understand the equity-based finance are also important because we don't want only to educate the socialization, but also build people fundamental reason why we should use the equity-based financing. And the last, I think, from the regulation that government regulation are needed to support and even force investment in those to shift to equity-based finance with a more coercive approach. Uh, but in the end, I think it takes the cooperation of various parties, not only the government, but also the bank, the customers, their family, their closest friends, and also other parties to share what is actually the value of equity-based financing. Because really, sharing is caring. And I think that's all the presentation from our group. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Demi, Iqbal, Erlangga, Asri, siapa lagi tadi?
Rizky, ma'am.
Rizky, ya. Okay, thank you for your presentation. Again, I will hold off the discussion session until the end. Now, I would like to ask the last group to present. Langsung saja.
Screen.
Yeah.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, Ma'am Karina and friends. In this occasion, Group 1 would like to present our work on last week's assignment. These are the members of our group. There's me, Jihan, Melinia, Sawa, and Suci. Okay, first I'd like to do a refresher on what debt financing is. So to put it simply, debt financing involves the borrowing of money and paying it back with interest. And here on the screen, you can see the data of the amount of debt financing done by commercial banks and Sharia business unit operation from the year 2016 until 2020. Generally, there's an increase in every product of debt financing, except perhaps for the Ijarah one, whereas there's a decrease in the year 2020. Also, perhaps the most obvious one is, as you can see, the difference between murabahah products and other debt financing products is quite jarring, as you can barely see the other products because of the sheer amount of murabahah ones. Murabahah is responsible for a massive part in debt financing. We'll talk about why this is so later in our presentation. Next, here we have the data for equity financing in Sharia commercial banks and Sharia business operation in the year 2016 until 2020. Again, like before, there's one product that makes up a large part of their financing. And for equity, that product is musyarakah. There's a steady increase in musyarakah product from year to year, whereas the mudarabah product relatively varies each year. Here we have the statistical data for debt versus equity financing in Sharia commercial bank and Sharia business unit operation for the past 5 years. During the year 2016 and 2017, we can see that there's a considerable gap between debt and equity financing, where people much prefer the debt financing method than equity ones. In 2016, there's almost a 60 billion rupiah gap between the two, and also an almost 48 in the year after that. But throughout the years, there's a decrease in the gap, where the gap decreased into a 21 in the year 2018, and especially in the year 2020, as we see the gap is closing, where there's only about 9 billion rupiah gap left between the two methods of financing. Next, we'll talk about the implication of the statistical data shown.
Okay, thank you, Jihan. Next, I will to explain about debt financing. Debt financing products are based on the principle of sell and purchase and the principle of leasing. The financing based on the buying and selling principle consists of murabahah, salam, and istisna. Financing under the lease principle consists of ijarah, which is based on the transfer of benefit. Financing based on the principle of debt financing dominates the world of Islamic banking. Some still view it as fair due to various obstacles faced in equity financing, which will be explained later on. So the type of product that dominates the financing carried by Islamic banks in Indonesia is the type of debt financing for easy reasons because deciding to provide debt financing doesn't require large costs because there is no need for a prior review process by the bank regarding business project and the risk of small losses because the profit margin has been predetermined so that the bank can calculate the profit generated on the financing. And murabaha is the largest contributor to the financing. The basic principle used in the practice of murabaha is buying and selling. The contract used is a sell and purchase contract. The implication of using a sell and purchase agreement requires that there are sellers, buyers, and goods sold. Sharia banks, as the seller, must provide goods for customers, in this case, as buyers, so that the customer is obligated to pay for the goods that have been delivered by the Sharia bank with the amount of this financing. The resulting operational and non-operational expense will affect the profit expense ratio of the Sharia bank concerned. And then the financing with a profit sharing system has a high risk in terms of losses that may occur. Sharia banks are still less able to produce profit sharing schemes because they are relatively more risky in the resulting rate of return. It can be positive or negative, depending on the final outcome of the business being financed. Financing with debt is still very popular with Islamic bank customers because Islamic banks themselves emphasize this type of financing more than others. This is more than anything else because the risk borne by the bank are relatively less and the resulting profit is clear. And next can explain by my friend Melin.
Okay, thank you, Suchi. Now I will explain about equity financing. So why does there's an imbalance of usage between debt and equity financing? Well, some say it is due to the various obstacles faced in equity financing. This constraint can be internal or external. Internal constraints, for example, are that there are still problems in Islamic banking, such as lack of understanding of the essence of Islamic banking, a prioritized business and business orientation, insufficient quality and quantity of resources, an attitude of aversion to effort and aversion to risk. So Islamic Bank consider that financing with a profit sharing system, equity financing has a high risk in terms of losses that can occur during the financing period where it can reduce company profits. Because as you remember, profit sharing financing is not only profit sharing but also loss sharing. But if the loss is not an error or negligence of the party who is given the financing, and that is linked to an external obstacle. Because of the character profit sharing financing that requires a very high level of honesty from the party receiving the financing in order to obtain sufficient confidence that the business to be financed with a profit sharing system is profitable and in good condition and has good prospects. Islamic banks must conduct careful research and that require a large amount of money. We can see that why in Islamic banking operations, banks prefer to provide financing in the form of debt financing than in the form of equity financing. From the data of equity financing in 2016 to 2020, we can see that it experienced a significant increase, and it is largely due to the growth of Musyarakah product in equity financing. For example, in 2020, Musyarakah makes up 93% of total equity financing. So what is Musyarakah? Musyarakah involves a partnership in which both the bank and its customer client contribute to entrepreneurship and capital. It is an agreement whereby the customer and the bank agree to combine financial resources to undertake any type of business venture and agree to manage the same according to the term of the agreement. Profits are shared between the bank and the customer in the pre-agreed ratio. And different from mujarabah, in musyarakah, losses are shared strictly in proportion to their respective capital contribution. This is in part of why there's a growth in musyarakah project. Bank has been pushing more. Okay, next presentation will be explained by Salwa.
All right, thank you, Melin. So I will talk about solution for Islamic bank and clients. For Islamic bank, the first solution is to develop risk management, which is comprehensive enough to cover measurement, reporting, management, and control of all risk and all instruments. Then Islamic banks can achieve good risk measurement by maintaining good quality data on past performances of the counterparty and by determining the probability of default and optimizing the profit sharing scheme. With an optimal profit sharing scheme, it is hoped that the principal agent problems in the equity financing can be minimized. The optimization of the profit sharing scheme is a way to create a fair share of the result between the bank, Sahibul Mal, and the customer, Mudorib, so that it can be placed at risk of against problem in equity financing. Okay, next, please. And solution for clients, the first one is education about equity financing. That understanding through education can give clients knowledge about investing in equity financing. With consideration about the advantages and disadvantages of equity financing through education that can be provided by the government, banks, and people who understand equity financing will give help knowledge to client. And the next one is understanding that Sharia banks are not supposed to be the same as the conventional one. That for clients, it is important to understand that the purpose of Islamic banks is to reach falah, as the purpose of Islamic bank itself is can expect to get the same products with great profit and little to no risk. Don't compare Sharia banks with conventional banks. Remember that the reason we use Sharia banks is to comply with Islamic law in order to get our heavenly reward later on. Next, please. All right, we've reached the end of our presentation. Thank you for your time and attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, the last group, for your presentation. Again, it was insightful. You presented us with good data. This also goes for the previous group, okay, who presented about equity and debt usage in Indonesia. Okay, now I would like to thank you for the presentation, and I would like to take over from here. Okay, so just a few comments. Yes, as both of the groups showed, that we are heavily biased towards debt usage. Yeah, so debt usage debt-based securities are still the dominant form of financing that we use. And you also stated some reasons, yeah, but actually there is an underlying reason behind all of those reasons, yeah, which is actually called the debt culture. Yeah, it's actually what's wrong is actually the culture. Yeah, this debt culture has been heavily rooted in the society, in the world society, since the beginning of time, actually, since long time ago. Yeah, before the Sharia financial industry was established. Yeah, and nowadays this debt culture is still very dominant. Yeah, one of the striking characteristics or of a debt culture is called income smoothing, or not income smoothing, I'm sorry, consumption smoothing. Yeah, what it means is basically what is normalized in the society these days, yeah, is that you don't wait until you are financially capable in order for you to consume. Yeah, so you want to consume as soon as possible. Yeah, so for example, what that means is a youngster, yeah, people like you, yeah, your age, who just graduated from the university from undergraduate study, and then you immediately get a job, a decent paying job, and then you immediately say that even though your savings aren't enough, yeah, even though if your savings are not enough because you just started working, but you already feel the need that you need to have a secure housing, therefore you take out a loan, yeah, cicilan rumah. Yeah, most youngsters, yeah, most of us, including myself, yeah, we aren't willing to wait until we've accumulated enough savings to buy houses. Instead, we want to do it now. Therefore, we want to take out a housing loan. That's called consumption smoothing. And that is what we have been raised to believe. Yeah. So, so to some extent, yeah, when it comes to housing, for example, because it falls under basic needs, then it's okay. Yeah. But when it comes to consumption smoothing for for secondary or tertiary needs, then that becomes a problem, because one of the Islamic beliefs is that debt is permissible. Yeah, it is allowed. Yeah. However, it's not desirable. Yeah, it's permissible. Debt in Islam is permissible, but it's not desirable. What does that mean? It means that it's an emergency situation. Yeah, debt is allowed when your fundamental or your basic needs are at hand. So when it comes to housing, maybe well, you need a house. You cannot have your wife, for example, your spouse, live in the same house with your brother's spouse, for example, because that's also not encouraged in Islam. Yeah, tidak berkumpul sesama ipar, for example. Then you need a separate house. Then that becomes a basic necessity. However, what's worrying is the growth of credit cards for secondary and tertiary uses. Yeah. Now, and this has to do with consumption smoothing, and in Islam, it's undesirable. What it means is it's permissible for primary needs, yeah, and having to borrow to fulfill your primary needs is not something that you desire. Yeah, you desire to be able to fulfill your own primary needs. Yeah, so what you desire is to not have to get into debt. Yeah, to not have to take out a loan. That's what you desire. Yeah, that's what we aim to achieve in life. Yeah, to not have to take out a loan. Yeah, because it's only emergency. Yeah, but so it's permissible, but it's not desirable. It's something that you avoid. Yeah, it's something that you take on if it's an emergency, like you immediately need a house. Yeah, otherwise it becomes difficult for you to work. It becomes difficult for you to worship Allah, for example. Then that becomes a basic necessity. Yeah. But what's worrying is today's debt culture. yeah, the consumption smoothing, yeah, you want to take out a loan for nyicil HP 0% misalkan, ya, nyicil HP, ya, for now, ya, because you don't want to spend on the amount of money that you have today on the type of handphone that is available for according to your capacity, financial capacity. So you would rather take out a loan in order to buy a better phone. Yeah, that's called debt culture, and that is the underlying reason why debt is the predominant type of financing in our country, and actually in most countries. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So it feels weird when you're talking, and yeah. But are you still with me? Can you hear my voice?
Yes, ma'am. We can hear
Yes,
you.
ma'am.
Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. So let's end today's presentation, and I'm going to get into my part. Yeah. I don't think I will cover everything today. I will move some parts of today's presentation to next week. Yeah. Minggu depan kita libur nggak ya? On Thursday. Ada libur ya? Do you know?
Kayaknya libur, Mem.
Oh, libur.
Kayaknya.
Lebarannya kan Rabu ya? Lebarannya Selasa atau Rabu ya?
Iya, kemarin sih dengar-dengar Rabu sampai Senin.
Oh, libur. Rabu sampai Senin libur.
Iya,
You sure?
Mem.
Dengar-dengar gitu. Belum ada pengumuman resmi ya? Okay, that's fine. Nggak apa-apa. You deserve it. Ya, namanya juga Lebaran. Okay. I'm gonna start sharing my screen. Please, someone tell me if you can see my screen already.
We can see your presentation, ma'am.
Okay, well, great. Okay, I'll start with the first slide. Slideshow. Wait, no. Slideshow. Okay. Okay, so today's topic is still about sources of financing, but now we will be talking about the markets. Yeah, we will talk about the markets, we will talk about the participants, we'll also talk a little bit about the products. Yeah, however, we're not going to cover everything today. Yeah, because it's 9:30 and my husband has gone off to work, I think, and then my kids are like a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. They're out there, and then yeah, I need to join them as soon as possible. Yeah, but let's try to achieve as much as we can. Okay, so what we will be discussing today is not today, but some of the things that we'll be discussing today is the components of financial market. Yeah, some of the components are, there's a primary and then there's a secondary market. I'm sure that everyone knows this already. Yeah, what is a primary market? Hello, anyone? What is a primary? What happens in a primary market? And then what's a secondary market? What's the difference between the two?
Primary market is between the issuer and the first investor.
Okay,
And
so
secondary market is between other investors with other investors.
exactly. So the primary market, there's only a sale transaction. Yeah, it's where companies who want to raise shares, yeah, for the first time, they go to this market. Yeah, this is the market for them. Yeah, and then once it's established in the market, yeah, now it is now it can be now freely traded. Yeah, by investors, among investors. Yeah, so exactly. Tadi siapa yang jawab ya? Namanya. Risky, okay. Now in the secondary market, it's between investors. So there's a sale and there's a buy transaction, buy sell transaction. Yeah. So that's this is just an overview. We'll get into the details later on. Yeah. So the secondary market is a liquidity tool for the products. Yeah. Okay. And then there's money market, and then there's capital market. What's the difference there? Apa tuh bedanya money market and capital market? Okay, wait. Ketinggalan. Ya udah, nggak apa-apa. Berarti mau besok aja. Okay, would anyone like to answer?
Ma'am,
Yes.
I want to try answer.
Yes, sebentar, Melinia ya?
Yes, money
Okay.
markets are used for short-term lending or borrowing. Usually, the assets are held for 1 year or less, whereas while capital markets are used for long-term securities, they have a direct or indirect impact on the capital.
Yes. Okay. So money market are, yes, correct, Melinia. Money market is a place, yeah, where short-term debt securities are traded. Yeah. So very short term, as short as 1 hour to 1 year. If it's above 1 year, then be it debt instruments or equity instruments, then they will be traded in capital market. Yeah. Now, money market is it important? Well, capital market seems to be more popular. Yeah, it's closer to us. Yeah, we hear it more in the news. Yeah, it seems like as individuals we are more involved in capital markets. Yeah, we can make accounts. Yeah, and in di bursa efek dan lain sebagainya. But why is money market important? Would you think? What is the use of a money market? Kalau capital market jelas ya, that's where it's a place. It's a market where you buy and sell. Any one of us can join. What about money market? What do companies use money market for? It provides liquidity. Yeah. Depending on the business strategy of companies, yeah, or business institutions, yeah, there are some investments that they would like to hold on to for more than a year, but then there are some business decisions that need solution in an hourly basis or in a daily basis or in a weekly basis. Yeah, as we've learned in your financial management class, there's a thing called working capital. Yeah, where that's current asset and current liability. Well, companies fulfill these needs through transactions in the money market. Yeah, there's transaction on commodities. Yeah, all different types of commodities, from agriculture to mining. Yeah, that's traded on a daily or even on an hourly basis, and this is ini penting, yeah, because it's like a place where a company could tap into quick cash. Yeah, for example, there's suddenly there's a sudden order. Yeah, for example, a company sells office furnitures. Yeah, and then there's a sudden order that requires us to deliver to furbish or furnish an office building, yeah, within 3 months. Yeah, therefore you need, however, yeah, you need raw materials for that, and your cash on hand is not enough. Therefore you need to sell some of your current assets in the money market, and then you retrieve the cash from the sales, and then you use that to buy raw materials to produce the office supplies or office furnitures for the business deal that you accomplish for the next 3 months. Yeah, so the money market provides liquidity. Yeah, what the company needs quick. Yeah, so it's just as important. It's just as important as the capital market. Yeah. And then the third one is the spot market and the futures market. Yeah, the spot market is what you it's goods, yeah, or commodity that is traded immediately. Yeah, although sometimes immediately will take at least 24 hours to take place because of differences in time, because of administrative issues. And then there's the futures market, where it's not traded. It's the trade occurs today, but then the settlement will occur in a future time. And then we'll also look at the Islamic perspective on these types of markets. Yeah. And then we'll talk about the options market. Yeah, what is an option? An option is it's the right. Yeah, it's the right. It's not the responsibility, but it's the right. Yeah, the right to buy or sell something. And because it is a right, then you don't have to do it. It's an option. You can choose not to do it. You can choose to do it or not to do it. Yeah, and the market that it's traded in, and then how's the Islamic perspective on this? And the last one, we'll be talking about the foreign exchange market. Yeah, what's permissible in Islam, what's frowned upon in Islam, and what's definitely forbidden in Islam. We'll talk about this as well. Yeah, let's start with touching a little bit on the primary and the secondary market. Yeah, when we talk about the market, we'll definitely talk about the IPO process, or the initial public offering. Everyone here knows what it is. Sometimes we call it going public. Yeah, it is when a company or a business entity, it's like berubah. Yeah, it takes a different form. Yeah, it takes a whole new life on its own. Yeah, jadi begitu, as soon as the company goes public, yeah, its life has changed. Yeah, what do you think? Why do you think the life of a company is now completely different the minute that it goes public? What's the striking difference? What is the the defining moment, or the defining characteristic that makes an IPO, that makes a company, as soon as it goes public, yeah, as soon as it goes into an IPO, then it's like, it's like, it's a new life. Why? Kenapa ya? Apa ya yang paling, what's the yang paling penting dari IPO yang membuat perusahaan itu jadi udah berubah? It's never gonna be the same again. Itu apa?
The company becomes more transparent to the public.
Okay, yes, but why? That's not belum. Yes, it's true. It needs to be transparent to the public. Why? There's an underlying reason that makes it IPO is a big, menjadi momok besar, menjadi PR besar, because therefore maka dia akan menjadi harus transparan, ya. Therefore they need to be more transparent, but because once you go public, it means that what?
The company should be profitable.
Maybe the company should provide dividend.
Not always.
Because it sells a portion of itself, ma'am.
Who said that?
Jihan.
Jihan, yeah. Okay, yes, Jihan. Thank you. So why IPO is like kayak kalau Superman tuh berubah dari Clark Kent menjadi Superman, ya, atau Hulk dari a regular human being into this green creature, is because the minute that you go public, it means that anyone could buy your shares. Yeah, you're offering yourself to the public. Yeah, you're offering the steering wheel of the company to the public. You're becoming public consumption. Yeah, you're inviting people to steer the direction of the company. Yeah, so a lot is at stake. Yeah, there's a lot of benefits of going public. What is the ultimate benefit? What do you seek for? What is your aim? What is your intention of going public? What is it that you want for? Is it for popularity? Why do companies go public? What is it that they look for? What's their main objective? There are many objectives, but I'm asking for their main objective.
Raising funds, ma'am?
Yes, of course. Yeah. Going public, yeah, provides its challenges, of course, but then its biggest benefit is now you're on the table. Yeah. Now you're on the shelf. Yeah. Now, so anytime that your business needs the immediate funding, yeah, your product is known. Yeah, your company is known to the world, and raising funds becomes easy, becomes convenient for you. Yeah. Yeah. So and that's the biggest, that's the fundamental reason why companies go through the hassle and the financial sacrifice, of IPOs, because it becomes easy and convenient in a timely fashion for them to raise funds. Yeah. Okay. Now, not everyone can go public. Yeah. Only companies that have strong fundamentals can go public. Yeah. Because when you go public, you become um, your fate, is determined by the market. It's determined by the supply and the demand. It's determined by the apa namanya? Kok saya jadi lupa kan that word I'm looking for, the sentiment. It's very much dependent on the market sentiment, and the market is a very emotional place. A place where emotions are at play, behaviors are at play. Emotions will shape behavior, and the behavior that we're looking for is buying and selling. Whether they believe a belief is very much important. And what shapes belief is strong fundamentals. So unless you have strong fundamentals, you won't be able to do an IPO. So before companies go on IPOs, a lot of times they will have to go through, before they go through IPOs, at first they need to rely on themselves, or from their existing investors. But then there are times but then business, they go through steps. They go through introduction, and they go to startup steps, and then all these steps. And business grows. And then of course, we're happy when sales keep on increasing. Sales of products or of services keep on increasing. But then remember, when you think about your balance sheet and your income statements, if sales increase, then you also, what does sales mean? Sales increase, it also means that you need to buy more material. When the demand increase and sales increase, it means that you need to buy more raw materials, because you need to produce more products. You need to pay more wages, the hourly wages. You need to pay more electricity. And you also need to remember that the cash, sometimes there are some cash transactions, but then there are also some cash that will only occur, ada yang dalam bentuk piutang, that will only occur in 1 month or 2 months and 3 months time. Then therefore you need to be careful. You need to finance the raw materials today. However, the money that come in will be, I don't know, 1 month or even 1 year from now. Therefore, you need to finance your sales. How are you going to finance your working material, raw materials and electricity, which you need to employ today? Therefore, you need to borrow some debt. So what I'm trying to say is, growing, increasing sales will require modal, will require capital. That's why there are some companies who they keep growing. They keep growing and growing and growing and growing until they go into bankruptcy. That sounds strange, but I hope you covered this in Manajemen Keuangan. It's possible. Why? Because of bad financial management. Because they keep on growing. People like the products. Crocs, sepatu Crocs itu dulu pernah mengalami ini. You see everyone wearing Crocs. But somehow they struggled financially. Why? Because they spend more today than what they receive today. Jadi pengaturannya tidak baik, and it's not an easy matter. It looks easy when we look at it on paper, when we look at it in our books, but when you do it on a day-to-day basis, it's not easy, because a lot of companies fell into this trap. They keep growing and growing. You might think that companies that go into bankrupt must be companies that no one buys their product. Not necessarily. Sometimes they're very popular, high demand, but they don't know how to finance their growth. They don't know that, okay, in order to buy secure raw materials, I need to borrow. But if I borrow, it bears interest. When do I pay interest? So, and then it becomes messy, because interest keeps growing at a rate more than the pricing of your product, for example, the demand of your product, and then it becomes messy, and then you just need to declare yourself bankrupt, so that you can start selling off your assets, and then repaying your debts, repaying your interest, and then start over again. But that's not good. Yeah, that's not a good way to conduct business. Yeah, you need to be able to sustain it. Yeah, therefore, yeah, companies before they go to IPO, there are a lot of things that they must cover first. Yeah, sometimes once they start growing at a fast pace, there are times when they need to turn to venture capitalists. Yeah, modal ventura. Yeah, what are venture capitalists? Can anyone here coba sedikit cerita what you know about venture capitalists? Their characteristics, maybe who they are, maybe that you know, that you're familiar with. Venture capitalists itu siapa? Modal ventura kalau bahasa Indonesianya. Who are they? Anyone?
Maybe it's like an institution, ma'am, that people put their money to that institution, and that institution will like kelola uangnya for any investment.
But do you know Iqbal ya? Iqbal? Was it you Iqbal? Yeah. Iqbal. Ini ada telepon sebentar ya. Sorry, I have to answer this. I have to answer this ya. Ini gimana sih? Halo? Okay. Can you hear my voice?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, but Iqbal, do you have any idea what kind of customers, what kind of businesses that they invest in?
I'm not sure about the exact special business that, in my opinion, it's like when someone or people want to, for example, make some restaurant or it's kind of a small business. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you, Iqbal. Yeah. Okay. So venture capitalists are financial institutions where they have funds ready to invest in promising business entities. Yeah. What do I mean by promising? It means that they're still private. Yeah. They're not on IPO yet. They're still private, but they have high growth potential. Yeah. And that's a must. Yeah. The reason why these companies must be viewed by venture capitalists as having high growth potential is because, do you know how do venture capitalists make money? What is the ultimate objective of a venture capitalist? Mungkin Iqbal or someone else would like to add dari apa yang sudah disampaikan oleh Iqbal?
Maybe it's a profit sharing, ma'am, with the project.
Okay, profit sharing, that's the goal. But there's another ultimate goal actually where venture capitalists get the most profit from. Yes, profit sharing from the business entity, but also there's an ultimate goal, which is
maybe from when they sold their equity in the company.
When they sell their equity in which market? In what process? In what mechanism?
I'm not quite sure, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Rizky. But more, okay. So venture capitalists, usually most of the time, I would say 99% of the time, the end game or their exit strategy is an IPO. Yeah. So usually these venture capitalists they're like the bridging process of a startup company until they take the startup company through the process of bettering themselves, improving themselves until they are fit enough to go public, to engage in initial public offering. Yeah. So venture capitalists, they look for relatively small startup companies who are highly promising. Yeah. And then what's also special about venture capitalists are that they don't just invest money Yeah, but what else? They don't just invest money, but they also
Business
they
knowledge map maybe.
yes, siapa who's speaking? Suka nggak nongol di
Demi.
saya. Demi ya. Yes, Demi.
Iya, ma'am.
Venture capitalists, mereka mau ikut campur. Yeah, they want to give advice, they want to give ideas, they even want to be part of the decision making. Yeah, because they know more. Actually, they know a lot. Yeah, so this is venture capitalist. So one characteristic of the business that they choose from, that maybe Iqbal and I have not mentioned before, is that it's promising growth. Yeah, but but usually in a financial management terminology, we also call that these small businesses are high risk. They are high risk businesses. Yeah, and this is the specialty of venture capitalists. Yeah, now in Indonesia we have around 65 venture capital companies, and 4 of them are Sharia. Yeah, do you know what's different? Kalau venture capital syariah itu bedanya apa? Kira-kira dengan yang
The
conventional, ya?
business they
Yeah, Nabila?
investing maybe.
Yes, you mean, what do you mean by the investing? The investment.
The Sharia venture capital only invest in Sharia business. Maybe.
Yes, correct. Yeah, so where they put the money in, the business, the startups that they choose must comply with this DSN rules. Yeah, and also the sources of the money that are put into this venture capitalists must also comply with the DSN rules. Yeah, what else? Apalagi bedanya? Dan ini penting ya. Ya, ini penting because then apa aja contohnya the industry ya, no alcohol, and then we don't get into the business of products yang membawa banyak mudorot ya, seperti peperangan dan lain sebagainya. And then we also berarti proporsi hutangnya yang mengandung mengandung riba tidak lebih dari 45%, kemudian interest income-nya tidak lebih dari 10%. So this is important. It's very important. Ya, this ini yang membuatnya menjadi jeruk sama apel jika dibandingkan dengan their conventional counterpart. Ya, what else? Selain the choice of startup and also the source of money must be Sharia compliant. What else? Satu lagi. Gampang sih sebenarnya. Tadi sudah disebut oleh Iqbal atau Rizky ya tadi, yang sebutin where the source of money that venture capitalists get selain IPO adalah
the investor, ma'am.
Yeah, the investor. So when it's venture capitalists, then it's profit sharing. Yeah, it should be Sharia compliant. The scheme, yeah, the mechanism should be Sharia compliant. What's permissible in Islam, profit sharing instead of interest, instead of hutang bearing interest, for example. Yeah, so that's and what's interesting is as of 2020, at the end of 2020, the OJK introduced a new law. Intinya the minimum capital requirement, venture capitals must have a minimum capital requirement, and having that law passed, only 50%, only 50% of those 65 venture capitalists that are able to fulfill those capital requirements. So I don't know, maybe in the future we're also looking at integration. So we'll see. But basically they're very small. These 65 venture capitalists are quite small. Only 50% of them has met the minimum requirements set by the OJK. Okay, and so what is the Islamic view of venture capitalists? Well, it's as long as it's Sharia compliant, then it's very good. It's very good. It introduces efficiency to the market. Why? Well, because now we like IPO. Yeah, we like how easy, we like efficiency. Yeah, one form of efficiency is when people need money. Yeah, the deficit unit, as soon as they need it, then there's a surplus unit that will answer. Yeah, that's why we support IPOs. We support trading in the market. Yeah. Now, sometimes there's a gap between how these small but promising businesses that they can tap into the IPO market. Yeah. And this is where the venture capitalists plays a role. Yeah, they help them out in preparing themselves so that they can be even more efficient and be able to tap on the available resources in the market. So in Islamic perspective, it's very good as long as it's Sharia compliance. Yeah. Okay, so that's the primary market. Yeah. Now let's talk about the secondary market. Yeah, there are two types of players in the secondary market. Yeah. First one is value investors, and the second one is speculators. Yeah, there's a lot of words di sini because what I'm doing here ini saya cuman copy paste dari buku kita Teaching Corporate Finance by Muhammad Obaidullah, and then I just changed some words. But so it's quite easy to understand. But what can someone tell me? What do you think is the fundamental difference? The fundamental difference between value investors and speculators, in your own words. Well, what's the difference? What's the fundamental difference between a speculator and a value investor? I would like to hear your opinion. Saya juga catat partisipasinya ya.
I want to try, ma'am.
Yes, siapa nih? Iqbal ya. Oke, silakan Iqbal.
Maybe for the speculator, it's purely like guessing which price will increase or decrease without any what do we call it, pertimbangan and some research about the business entity, or maybe in IPO is like the what effect. And for the value investor, they will research about the companies that they want to buy, and maybe it's not only about the financial report, but also the issue about the company and what's the plans company for 1 or 2 years ahead, and that's the point, the difference between the speculator and the valuable investor, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Iqbal. It's a good answer. Yeah, it's a good answer. We're on the same page. Yeah, the same frequency. Maybe I will state it a little bit differently, but it's the same. Yeah, the idea is the same. If you look at the conventional point of view, they would say, yeah, the conventional point of view of membedakan, of differentiating between speculators and value investors is risk. Yeah, the amount or the level of risk that is involved. This is the conventional perspective. Yeah, that's for example, for value investors, sure, there's always risk associated with everything. Yeah, there's nothing is risk-free in this world. Even when we say that the government bonds are risk-free, it's never risk-free. The government can go into bankruptcy, like what happened to Greece, for example. Yeah. So risk is always available. Even when you're a value investor, you still take on some risk. Yeah. But when you're a speculator, you take on risk, even though the risk is a probability, right? A downside and upside. Yeah, it goes upways and downways. But a speculator takes a decision even if the downside risk is much bigger than the upside possibility. That's what the conventional finance try to differentiate between value investors and speculators. Yeah, for example, like what Iqbal says, speculators, they don't have much information about a certain stock or a certain company, but then they heard it through the grapevine, that it's going to be good performing, so they make a quick decision, because there's no deep analysis involved. It means that the downside risk is very high, and then they make a decision based on this. Now what about in Islamic perspective? Ini menjadi ribut. This becomes messy, a bit messy. Kenapa? A bit ribet. Kenapa? Karena di situ jihadnya. Semua menjadi serba sulit. Sulit in terms of kita harus lebih berhati-hati. In terms of the more we try to comply by the Syariah standards, the more difficult it is. Seperti menggenggam bara api kan katanya, but that's where the jihad is. Sekarang itu perdebatannya antara is speculation to some extent okay, or is it really non-permissible at all? And then that gives rise to the debate of stock markets. Syariah, saham syariah itu permissible or not at all permissible. Now I'm going to talk about kalau yang non-permissible sudah jelas ya. Yang non-permissible sudah jelas karena kan ada unsur, mereka melihatnya yang utama tuh maisirnya gamblingnya. Jadi ada unsur untung ruginya dan lain sebagainya, kemudian bau-bau riba dan lain sebagainya. So but I'm going to touch on a little bit on the contemporary views, contemporary Islamic scholars' views on speculation, especially when we talk about stock markets, financial markets, stock markets in this sense, So basically, the conclusion is that speculation, to some extent, is permissible. To some extent, speculation is permissible. This is the Islamic definition of permissible. Because because their argument is speculation. What they define as speculation is taking risk. Taking risk means not knowing what the outcome will be, making a decision without knowing what the outcome will be. And their argument is that since the beginning of time, speculative behavior, the behavior of not knowing what the outcome will be, has been present, even has been undertaken by our forefathers. Actually, by that one father that we had, Prophet Adam. Prophet Adam, Adam and Eve, Adam dan Hawa, they took a speculative action when they decided to eat buah yang dilarang. They took a speculative action and it turned out for the worse. They got kicked off from heaven and then they descended to earth. They were punished by Allah and then they descended to earth. They took a speculative action. The same goes to our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When he was engaged in wars, he made some calculative risk-taking behaviors. For example, what he did in Perang Badar with regards to di mana mereka akan stay, apakah di dalam Madinah atau di luar dan lain sebagainya. He took a risk-taking behavior without knowing what the outcome will be. So to some extent, we'll underline this. To some extent, speculative behavior is unavoidable. Will always be present. So in the case of Islamic financial instruments that are traded in the market, like the share markets, it's permissible, as investing your money into something. Investing your money into something which you're not certain of the outcome is permissible as long as one, you ada ikhtiarnya, because ada banyak ayat yang mengatakan bahwa we're provided with akal, akal kita digunakan untuk to try and find what's best for us, therefore kita harus menggunakan akal. we have to look at the fundamental condition of companies. Yeah, we have to look at what products do they sell. Yeah, is this promising? Is this good for the environment? And always, of course, the trend is always going to be we want the environment to be better. So if the product is going against that trend, then why would we bother investing in it? Yeah. What about their debt structure? Is it healthy? We need to use our akal. Yeah, because that's why Allah created. Ya, di muka bumi ini kita untuk mengembalikan what Allah has given to us in a good shape and form. Yeah, to leave this earth, yeah, in having kept everything that we touch intact, including our money. Yeah, jadi we use our akal. That's one condition. Yeah, we use our akal. And the second condition is tidak ada zalim. Ya, jadi kita tidak menzolimi seperti kata hadis ya. Kita tidak mendolimi diri sendiri dan juga tidak mendolimi orang lain. Therefore, the shares, the trade in shares should not mendolimi orang lain. Artinya, misalkan nanti kita akan bahas seperti misalkan ada margin trading, kemudian ada short selling, where there's a very high chance that akan ada yang minus besar, ya. That's frowned upon. That's forbidden in Islam. And also the third one is we should avoid betting. Betting itu jadi kayak gambling, ya. Gambling means blind chance. Blind artinya buta. Ya, buta ini sebenarnya mirip banget sama yang pertama. You need to use our akal. Jadi seperti yang dikatakan oleh Iqbal tadi, value investors. It means that we buy shares because we believe, because from what we know, from what we read, from what we study in finance, or from online courses or whatever, this is a valuable investment. Yeah, this is different. Yeah, and then this is permissible. Then the Sharia stock markets becomes permissible if this is the case. Yeah. How is speculative? What is non-permissible speculative behavior? For example, when you're there just because of the news, yeah, and then you plan to, okay, I'm just gonna hold on to the shares because the price is high right now for 1 week, and then after that I'm gonna immediately sell it, yeah, without really deep analysis as to the performance of the product, of the market, or whatever, yeah. You just hold on to it for liquidity. You just hold on to it for speculation. Yeah, you're in it. So that's called day trading, for example. Yeah, day trading. It means that you're in it. You're only in it for 1 day, for example, and then the next day you're out. You keep buying and selling with really no long-term objective. Yeah, then that's speculative behavior. Yeah, so it's really difficult to define. Benar-benar like this is the definition. Ini harusnya no, but you get a feel of what's permitted and what's prohibited. Yeah, when you don't really analyze it, when you are just there because of harga lagi jatuh, beli nanti jual lagi trading short term without really deep analysis, then that really feels like speculative behavior. And this has proven to be dangerous, right? Like what happened in 2001 with the dot-com bubble. Yeah, what happens with the speculative behavior? They trade so fast, ya, karena tidak dalam analisisnya. When the analysis is deep, when you believe in a company, when you believe in an investment, then if suddenly the share price of the company drops, you want to look further into it. What's going on? Oh, the price drops because of the resignation of a certain management board, yeah. But that's okay because the product itself is still promising. Because so I'm still gonna be in the market, yeah. So you don't immediately sell your products. But when you're a speculator, you don't even bother to read the news. Yeah, or you don't even bother to look into the fundamentals of the company. For example, what happened in 1999 when the internet shares were so hit, yeah, and then you see people start buying shares of .com companies, and then these speculators, they says, oh, price is coming up, and then they immediately buy, and then when the price goes up, they immediately sell to cash in their profits. They keep on going this, and what it becomes very the trade, the traffic becomes very high, and what happens is you create a bubble. Yeah, what speculators do is they create a bubble. What is a bubble? A bubble is something that is big but hollow or empty inside. Why? Because it's not based on fundamental analysis. It's not based on the real value of the company. It's based on belief. Ya kan? Speculative behavior. So it creates a bubble. And what happens to a bubble? It will eventually pop, which is what happened in 2001. Yeah, hancur. Ya kan? The price drops, and a lot of these .com companies, they cease to exist. Yeah. So in Islam, that's our view of speculative behavior. Yeah, we're uncomfortable with it. Yeah, but to some extent, it's unavoidable. Ya, jadi itu argumen kita ketika ada yang bilang kok saham kok boleh gitu, karena ya itu tadi dibolehin asalkan some conditions must be met. Okay, next is what about brokerage services? Because we're talking about primary and secondary market, so brokerage services as the intermediary becomes important. Then what are our views in Islam? It's good, yeah. I mean, they're crucial, yeah. Their involvement is crucial, especially in this, yeah, informational services to investors, because it will encourage value investing, yeah, because the more informed investors are, the less they will engage in speculative behavior. Artinya begitu harga turun langsung jual tanpa tahu the fundamental condition of a company, yeah. So informational services from brokerage services will encourage value investing and discourage speculative behavior, which we don't like very much, yeah. However, what is not allowed is the activities that will encourage speculation, also that is riba affiliated or riba related, yeah. For example, yeah, they're not allowed to cater margin trading. What is margin trading? Jadi if an investor employs the service of a brokerage firm, and then they put their money into a certain account, yeah, and then the brokerage firm use the money, yeah, to buy a certain securities, yeah, and then this is like the brokerage firm lends the money to the investor, and then there's interest that's being charged, yeah. This is not allowed, yeah, and of course, yeah, it's allowed as long as the shares are all Sharia compliant, yeah. And then next, okay. This is the last slide that I'm going to show you because it's now almost 10, it's 10:20. The last slide that I'm going to show you today is what are the types of Islamic securities and how they are created. The first one is direct structuring of securities. The second one is asset securitization. Well, the first one is basically you raise money by selling debt securities, by selling, and then you use the proceeds or the money to invest in assets. And then that asset will generate income, and then you give it back in form of return to the investors. As for the second type, the asset securitization, that's the opposite. You have asset first, and then you somehow create this asset becomes an underlying asset, and then you create financial instruments, and then you sell it to investors. Yeah. And then so within this framework, we'll be talking about. We'll get deeper into sukuk, yeah. This is some of the contohnya ini, ya, skema-skemanya, yeah. We'll talk more about that in the following meeting. I don't know, maybe 2 weeks from now, yeah. That is all from me. Do you have any questions? I'll take one question, 1 or 2 questions. Do you have any questions? Silakan, ada yang mau ditanyakan atau ada yang mau di-share dengan pengetahuan yang ingin di-share, yang menambah wawasan kita semua juga boleh. Can you hear my voice? Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. We can hear your
Okay, good. Do you have any questions? If not, nggak ada? Okay, then let's call it a day. Ya, let's finish off here and good luck ya. 10 malam terakhir, mudah-mudahan mari kita semua memohon agar Allah segera mengangkat wabah penyakit ini. Kita memohon semoga teman-teman kita yang sakit diberikan kesembuhan. Kita memohon semoga kita yang sehat diberikan kekuatan supaya tetap bisa sehat. Ya, I wish you the best of luck. Ya, and sudah ya. Mari kita akhiri. I will see you 2 weeks from now. Mari kita tutup dengan doa kafaratul majlis. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika asyhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Alright, I'll see you. Bye bye everyone. Stay healthy. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam.